Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Couples Academy show. My name is Hassani. Good to have all of you with us here today. We're going to be talking about an important topic. This is something that I deal with every single day. Oftentimes, when people are calling for help and they're sharing their story about their situation, either a spouse has owned his or her responsibility, or B, they are living in complete denial. And this is very frustrating when you're seeking help because you want to restore the relationship, but the spouse continues to deny, even when you're in counseling and you're going through weekly sessions or you're doing some type of an intensive. It is hard for a person to move forward, to heal, to gain the closure that they need if their spouse continues to deny what has occurred. So, our topic for today is My Spouse Denies the Affair. And we're going to talk about the four different types of denial that an individual typically engages in, which makes recovery extremely difficult. But before we dive into today's conversation, what I want you to do is like, share, and subscribe. Let your community know that we are live. Listen, it doesn't cost you anything. We give you so much value every single day. All I want you to do is just like. Come on, click that like button. Click that like button because when you do that, you're voting for us. When you do that, it's helping to push the video further out. And so the algorithm, the way Facebook and YouTube and all these platforms work, we get more visibility. So if you like what you're hearing, click that like button, share that button, and so the world can know that we're live. All right. Also, Last Chance Weekend is coming up next weekend. No, actually, it's this weekend. Wow. Time is flying. May 19th through the 21st. So what we want you to do is share that as well. If you have not signed up, if you're vacillating, should I stay? Should I go? Should I do this? Should I not? Is the investment worth making? I want you to know it is a transformational experience that you do not want to miss. All right. So let's talk about today's conversation. My spouse denies the affair. Okay. So I just got a intake form just the other day, and a couple's been married for 5 years now. And for 4 of those 5 years, one spouse had a suspicion that their partner was engaged in all types of activities that he continues to deny. Even with the evidence, even with the records, even with video, even with recorded conversations, when it was presented to him, there was still a denial of the fact. And so it makes a person want to pull their hair out. It makes a person feel like they're in crazy and just insane because it's almost like the Rodney King situation. We all saw Rodney King being beat up by all of these police officers on the side of a highway in LA many years ago. However, they convinced us that our eyes were lying to us, that we were not actually seeing what we were seeing. And so that same posture, that same disposition, that same agenda is used by, unfortunately, unfaithful partners who do not want to take ownership for their deeds and actions. And so, just to give you an understanding of what denial is, just keep it simple. Denial is a defense mechanism that serves to protect the ego from things that the individual cannot cope with. I think that's worth reading again. Denial is a defense mechanism that serves to protect the ego from things that the individual cannot cope with. And so, because it's too painful for me to acknowledge my own faults and flaws and idiosyncrasies, for me to even form my lips to articulate that what I'm doing is sin and a betrayal, I rather deny it altogether because I'm worrying about how I feel in the situation and not how the other person feels. So, when it comes to denial, there are four types of denial that we want to unpack. We're going to take this really slowly so you get a comprehensive understanding. And I want you to think about, as we're doing this, have you operated in denial, or are you in a situation where your spouse continues to deny? So, the first type of denial is what we call the denial of fact. Okay, so the fact is your spouse has cheated. Now, either you have a strong suspicion, and as you're dotting I's and crossing T's and closing loops, it is evident that your spouse has been engaged in an affair, or you have actual evidence because you've waited to bring it up to your spouse because you knew that he or she would typically deny. And interestingly enough, if you don't have facts, if you don't have evidence, people will deny for days, for weeks, for months, for years. Because if you cannot prove it, why would I own it? Because if I own it, the acknowledgement of it may lead to a whole host of problems. So I'd rather take it to the grave. But even when there's evidence, people tend to still deny. And so you'll typically hear things like, it never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. You're so insecure. You're so paranoid. You're wrong. Your allegations are completely not true. If this is the verbiage that you're hearing, even when you have concrete evidence, it is an indication that they're living in complete denial. And so, yet, these are individuals who want to remain in the marriage. They want to stay in the relationship, but they want to stay in it based upon false pretenses, okay, and based upon erroneous erroneous thinking. And so that is the first type of denial. The second type of denial that well, first of all, before we even get there, if you're a person who is lying and denying the fact that it happened, there are different levels of acknowledgement that you have to engage in. So for every denial, there's an acknowledgement, okay? And so first, you have to acknowledge that there is actually a real problem. The problem is real. It actually did happen. So that's the first step, because once you've acknowledged that the affair actually occurred, you got to understand there's other potential types of denials that you can still engage in. So it's not just owning what you did, but it's all the other levels that we're going to go through. Okay. So this is step one. You got to get over this hurdle. Now think about the Donkey Kong video game. Remember playing Donkey Kong back in the day? And so here you have this gorilla or this person jumping over a barrier, jumping over a hurdle on their way to get to the top to save the queen. But as they overcome one hurdle, they think the coast is clear. But yet, here comes another hurdle, right? Another hurdle that they have to deal with. And so, this second hurdle in this process is the fact that oftentimes a spouse, if they have acknowledged the affair, they will do this: they will deny the impact of their affair. See, one of the challenges that spouses have is they can't find true healing and move forward until they believe that their spouse understands the gravity of their actions and the impact that their behavior has had on their spouse's life. And so oftentimes people are not sensitive, they don't have empathy, they don't have compassion for what their spouse is going through. And so this is why joining the mentorship program, the moving forward program, when you're around other couples who've been through the same pain, a spouse can now appreciate what their partner has been talking about because they see other people who articulate similar experiences. So if I tuned in, or if I did not tune into what you were saying, I actually ignored what you were saying, but I could actually hear the pain and see the pain in somebody else. It gives me a different appreciation for what my spouse is going through. But this denial of impact shows up in a variety of different ways. And oftentimes people will make statements like, it's not that big a deal, right? It's no big deal. Listen. It didn't mean anything to me. I didn't care about the person. It was just sex. Don't be so sensitive. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, right? And so that language really speaks to a heart issue. It speaks to an issue of, yeah, I did it, and yeah, I did it, move on. Yeah, I did it. Can we just forget about it? And so the reality is they don't understand the pain. And so this is why we oftentimes talk about how I remember somebody saying that infidelity the feeling, the pain of it. The pain of infidelity is worse than the pain of death, right? Because when somebody dies, it's a permanent situation. Yes, there's a pain of the loss. But when you've had an affair on me, not only am I dealing with the pain of the loss of the relationship, but now I'm still living and operating and functioning with the person who caused the violation. So it's a pain that can linger for a long time, especially when the spouse doesn't own what he or she has done. And so it's a perpetual pain that they live with every single day until this issue is resolved. Okay, so when we're talking about your denial of the impact, how do we overcome that? Well, number one, you've got to admit the seriousness of the problem. Okay, so one thing we know for sure: betrayed spouses, in essence, educate themselves on affairs. In essence, many of them almost have their PhD in infidelity because they're trying to figure out what happened to them. They're trying to understand the why. They're trying to process their own feelings and emotions. They're trying to figure out why they don't feel normal, why they can't sleep at night, why they have no appetite, why they're constantly triggered. So they're constantly on a quest to discover information to help things make sense. Meanwhile, the former offender doesn't even want to think about it. They want to consider it an experience that's now a part of their past. And why would I want to revisit the past? I'd rather push it away and run as far away from it as possible. And oftentimes they remain completely ignorant of infidelity, ignorant of their behaviors, and ignorant of the impact. And so that creates an added stress and strain on a relationship because one person is all invested to figure out what they need to do to heal. Meanwhile, they have a partner who's committed to staying in the relationship, begging and pleading their spouse to stay in the relationship, but won't do the research, won't get education, won't figure out the how of restoring this relationship. Listen, guys, you're watching a Couples Academy show. We're talking about my spouse denies the affair. We just covered two types of denial. We're going to go to the other two on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.
Good morning, guys. We're back. You're watching the Couples Academy show. We're talking about how my spouse denies the affair. We were just talking about different ways that they deny it. And so I was giving typical verbiage or statements that an unfaithful partner will make that minimizes and diminishes what they've done. And so one of the comments from Tamika says that that kind of verbiage makes the victim feel like they are crazy and making things up in their head. And that's exactly right. Like they will literally convince you you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just schizoid, you're so insecure, you're so paranoid. And so in essence, they're making the problem you. You're the problem. You're the problem. And so it can literally feel like you're losing your mind because even though you have the evidence, you're looking for them to acknowledge and to admit what you already know. And so even though I know it, I still don't find closure in the matter because I can't get you to fess up. And so that's an internal struggle that oftentimes the former betrayed spouse has in their personal healing and hopes and believing that what's the point of staying if you want, listen, if you can't acknowledge what you did in the past, if you're still covering for what you did in the past, if you're still minimizing what you've done in the past, how do I know that you won't do the same thing in the present and in the future? So it diminishes one's hope and belief that things can actually turn around. All right, we're going into the third type of denial, and it is the denial of accountability. That's right, the denial of accountability. This is a big one because a lot of times people attempt to avoid responsibility due to extenuating circumstances. Like, you can't expect me to take responsibility for what happened, even if they do acknowledge it. All right. So they've acknowledged it, right? Because maybe you had to strong arm them and they eventually came out and said, fine, I did it. But they don't take accountability for what they've done. And oftentimes they will say, there were extenuating circumstances that contributed to my actions. And so even though they are the one who caused the problem, they're taking on the role of the victim. I am a victim to circumstances. I am a victim to situations that really, it's not me. It's something that caused me to do it. I was stressed out. I was dealing with the pressures of work and didn't know how to handle it. And so the stress of work caused the breakdown. And that's why I did it. We blame it on the alcohol. I was drinking too much, right? Now, I'm just saying, listen, I know that there's a close tie and association between alcohol and sex or alcohol and infidelity. But for many people, it's an excuse. You're using it as an excuse. So now the drug, or in this case, the alcohol, is the reason why you cheated. Come on. Hey, I was in a bad mood, right? I wasn't my normal self. Or you made me cheat. Why? Because you don't give me enough time. You don't give me enough sex. You don't give me enough attention. It's what you said to me or what you did to me, and it drove me away. And so in this case, yes, there are always situations that we can point to that provide pressure, right? There's pressure that I experienced in my life or in our relationship that may have been a contributing factor, but the decision to do what I did is 100% on me. And until I take accountability and responsibility for my deeds and actions, it will be extremely difficult for a spouse to feel safe, for a spouse to trust, and for a spouse to genuinely forgive. And so, one of the ways that we need to take accountability is we need to assume full responsibility for the damages of our actions. Okay, that's critically important. If we don't do that, it will be very difficult for a spouse to heal. We're going to go to the last one. Okay, and this is a deep one: the denial of change. Okay, we got to talk about this for a while because the reality is, a lot of times people really, they don't place a lot of value in the need for change. Okay. And when you deny having to change, you're really denying ownership, once again, and responsibility for what you've done. And so oftentimes the things that a person will say who's denying change will say something like, well, that was who I was in the past, right? That happened in the past. There's no point in continuing to bring it up. Like, how many times are we going to have this conversation? How long are we going to have to deal with it? I don't want to talk about it because it's in the past. And I'm not trying to go into the past. I'm trying to move things forward, right? So if we can't have a conversation about what was done, then there's no acknowledgement, there's no ownership, and there's no need to change anything that we don't take the time to acknowledge. Or we may say something like, well, listen, that's just the way I am. I've always been this way. I'm always going to be this way. And so now you have an inherent, deeply embedded belief system that this is just what I do. And so, therefore, if this is who I am and this is what I do, then get used to it because it may just happen again. Now, you may not say it's going to happen again, but when you own or take on an identity of a cheater or someone who has a weakness or a struggle, listen, I just have friends. It's no big deal. Listen, it's just a weakness. It's no big deal. Listen, I've been struggling with this all my life. I mean, it's just who I am. So if you've accepted that as your identity, then it's going to be hard to break. It's almost like saying, listen, I'm a black man. There's no denying that I'm black, and there's no denying that I'm a man. That is my identity. And so I can't do anything out of I can't be a female who's Asian. It's just not going to happen. So if I identify myself as, hey, I'm just a cheater, or hey, this is just my weakness. We all got weaknesses, don't we? You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. So when we use that statement, it's a refusal to face our sins, our weaknesses, our idiosyncrasies. You're right, to face those bad behaviors head on, to produce a change because it requires doing something different. And so when we do these things, it damages what we're looking to restore in the relationship. And so the way around this is we've got to demonstrate, number one, remorse and a desire to heal through words and actions. Listen, it doesn't matter just what you say, it matters what you do. But if you do things and don't verbally acknowledge what you're doing, then there's something missing as well. So the combination of what I say and the combination of what I say and do, that alone can produce the change within me, which ultimately produces the change in the relationship. And so there's got to be a new way of thinking. There's got to be a new way of acting and behaving. There's got to be a new environment that you place yourself in. There's got to be a new standard that you live your life by. There's got to be a new frame of mind, a new thought pattern. Like everything about you has got to change if your behavior is going to change. Because if we just focus on changing the behavior, we're dealing with a fruit issue. But if we deal with the internal things that's causing the behavior, we're now dealing with a root issue. Okay. And once we dig down to the root of it all and are able to address that, then the fruit automatically changes. So hopefully this was helpful. If you are in a relationship where you have been in denial, or you're in a relationship where your partner continues to deny what he or she has done in any one of these categories, it is time for you to reach out and get the help that you need. We have an amazing team of practitioners all over this country who make impact on the lives of individuals and their marriages. So just simply reach out to us at couplesacademy.org. Call us at 678-200-8996, and we would love to be a part of your healing journey. Listen, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you got something out of today's show, and we'll see you tomorrow for another great episode. Take care.